delay for installing the sidewalk along Holly Street, and that delay is due to a delay in undergrounding the overhead utilities in that area. A second minor delay will be in installation for landscape, also due to a delay from Excel, but this is from having to energize the irrigation system before we go ahead and put landscape in. So the board can anticipate for Del West and staff to come back with further details about those delays in the near future. Regarding Del West's for sale products, on the parcel C1, there is a planned single-family detached neighborhood that will have 30 homes. Many of those, 30 homes, and they're currently under contract for several of those homes and will be available to move in later this year. On parcel C2, we have the duplex community with 40 planned units, and those should be available for move-in in the beginning of early next year. On parcel C3, it's another duplex community with 68 units planned to be under construction in Q2 of next year. Then on parcels F1 and F2, we have a planned townhome project, each with 120 units. Moving on to the for rent products, on parcel D1, there is a market rate apartment project called Greyhound Flats, and there will be 270 units available with a mixture of studio, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. Those will be move-in ready in 2023. Further updates regarding parcel D1 is this past week, staff did provide a letter of support to Del West and Wells Fargo for the appeal to HUD. Staff is certainly happy to have a further conversation with the board, but we believe you're all up to date on that endeavor. The rejection from HUD for the financing of D1 certainly has macro and micro level impacts of being able to secure financially obtainable housing at Mile High Greyhound Park, as well as the surrounding core city area. But again, we have provided a letter of support for Del West and Wells Fargo, and we are hoping for a positive outcome. Related to D1, but separate from that issue, staff is still working with Del West to negotiate the potential TIF reimbursement agreement that we initially discussed with you earlier this year. For parcel D2, that will be an income-restricted, affordable apartment community with 233 units, including studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. Those are planned for move-in in 2022. On parcel D3, we will have a permanent supportive housing project with 50 units. The particular voucher type and project timing for parcel D3 are still to be determined, but we will keep the board apprised. So parcels A and B, quick reminder, these are our education and commercial parcels. Staff is working collaboratively with the school district to identify the terms and conditions of our partnership for the planned multi-use building, and we anticipate reviewing proposals here in the near future. Sometime before the end of the year, staff will also prepare a new urban renewal plan amendment for the hotel and parcel D1. That amendment will come back before you. Our executive director does intend to go ahead and execute the letter of intent that we discussed at our last meeting, and will then begin the process of finalizing the purchase and sale agreement for execution of that future hotel on parcel B. We will go ahead and look at the LOI terms on the following 2 slides, and the parcel map and site rendering provided by HOK that you have all seen before. But this is what we are working off of to plan parcels A and B. So LOI key terms for you all. Many of these you have seen before, but some are new, and we felt it prudent for you to be in the loop. So as a reminder, Pure Strike will purchase 2 acres on the southeast corner of East 63rd and Highway 2 for their hotel. The purchase price will be $12 per square foot, which is approximately $1,500,000. The developed hotel will offer 122 rooms in a 4-story building with 125 spaces of surface parking. The project will, of course, be platted, and we will ensure that it is built outside of the floodway as well as the 100-year floodplain. In addition, permit fees for the project will be waived, and Pure Strike will provide earnest money within 5 days of contract execution. The due diligence for the project will last for 90 days, and that period will be followed by an additional 150-day period for permitting and financing. We anticipate that closing on the property will occur by July 31st, 2022, but that could be delayed since we are a little behind on our LOI key terms. So as soon as we have that LOI executed, we will go ahead and execute the associated purchase and sales agreement, which will allow the entitlement process to begin shortly thereafter. And then project completion by fall of 2022. That concludes our updates for the evening. Happy to go into further details with any of those topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry, for that presentation. Does anybody on the board have any questions for staff? Board Member Wadiola.
Thank you, Chairman. For the negotiations or talks with the district, are we just looking at the district, or are we talking post-secondary for the collaboration?
In our last discussion with the district, they indicated that Metropolitan State University is the secondary partner that would enter into the arrangement on culinary arts if we go that direction.
So it would be with both then. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you again for that presentation. One last item of business before we move on and adjourn this meeting. I'm looking for a motion and a second to excuse those members that did not have the opportunity to attend. Board Member Alan Thomas and Vice Chair Frank.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to excuse those members not present. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. And the motion carries unanimously. That concludes all the business we had for the Urban Renewal Authority meeting this evening. We will now adjourn and convene the City Council meeting in a couple minutes. This is a hybrid meeting allowing public access using the Zoom platform. Members of the public can view this meeting live on Channel 8 or the city's website. Live Spanish translation services are being provided for tonight's council meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091 star. The city clerk is the host of the Zoom meeting. Members of the public who have registered to speak will be recognized at the proper time.
Miembros del público pueden ver esta junta en Canal 8, transacción, servicios. Para la junta ahora pueden llamar por teléfono al 720-386-9023 usando el código 104091 estrella.
Thank you, Councilmember Wadiola. At this time, I will call the regular meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Huseman,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Frank,
Present.
Councilmember Madera,
Present.
Councilmember Alan Thomas,
Present.
Councilmember Noble,
Present.
Councilmember Guardiola,
Present.
Councilmember Hurst,
Present.
Councilmember Grimes,
Present.
Councilmember Smith,
Present.
Mayor Huseman, you have a quorum, and Mayor and council members, we've done some extensive testing since the last meeting. Your ideal distance from your microphone to pick it up over the speakers to hear everybody is going to be about 3 to 6 inches away, so just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. And for the record, everybody is present. At this time, we will looking to see if anybody who would like to make an amendment to the agenda. Seeing no request to do so, we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to invite those present and remote to join us in a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All public comment will occur during citizen communication except for public hearings. Persons who are registered to speak under multiple items will be allowed to speak multiple times. We'll now move on to citizen communication. Per council policy, citizen communication is the time on our agenda for the public to address council on business and affairs of the city. Per council policy, citizen communication cannot occur before the time stated in the agenda without council approval. The estimated time in the agenda for citizen communication is 6:45 p.m. The time is now 6:20 p.m. Does anyone on council wish to make a motion to allow citizen communication at this time? Councilmember Madera?
I'll make the motion to allow such communication at this time.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to allow citizen communication to take place at this time. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Noble?
My only concern would be that whether the citizen who wished to speak is actually here.
I am told by the city clerk that that individual is online, ready to speak.
Thank you. No objection then.
Seeing no other requests for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion carries unanimously. We will move citizen communication to now. City Council is not able to hear any comments at this time on land use matters that are before or may come before council. Please reserve such comments for the appropriate public hearing. As a reminder, we take your comments seriously, but do not generally respond to comments until later in the evening. Council must wait until administrative council business to take action in response to citizen communication. Council members can ask questions of speakers if desired. The city needed advanced registration in order to participate in citizen communication for this meeting. If you are currently in the meeting to speak during citizen communication, please listen for me to call your name, and the clerk will unmute you so you may begin. If you do not respond or are disconnected, you may miss your chance to comment. Please give your name and address for the record and keep your comments limited to 3 minutes. If a council member wants to ask a question, please ask to be recognized when the speaker is finished. Our one speaker for the evening is Steve Douglas.
Steve, you should be able to unmute yourself, and you'll have 3 minutes once you begin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight in this hybrid meeting. Just want to address a couple of things. I sent everyone on council a letter about the road condition on the street that I live on, which is, I'm sorry, give my address, 10970 Unity Parkway, Commerce City, 80022. And the road condition, when the road was built and the traffic and all, and then there's a series of pictures that show with the cracks and the depth of the cracks. The other issue I have down in this, on the road here, it's a one-way on both sides. It's heavily used as far as foot traffic in the median, in the middle median that goes all the way up. This trail goes all the way up to 104th. It goes across the park, then heads south to the 204th. At the corner of Parkside Drive North and Unity Parkway is a school bus stop for kids. And there's a lot of cars go back and forth, either dropping kids off or leaving. But as far as the traffic going north and east, they're not driving 25 or 30, they're driving pretty fast. Because on this side, which is Parkside North, there's not as high of a speed table as there is on Parkside South, which is on the south side of the park. And they run parallel as far as the streets go. And just in the area there, though, if there could be maybe like we have the crossing signs that flash, or put a stop sign so it's a three-way stop, that would be great. There's, like I said, there's kids all the way from elementary to, middle school and high school that go to that bus stop in the morning. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Does anybody on council have any questions for Mr. Douglas? Seeing none, we thank you for your time in speaking with us this evening. If follow-up is necessary, you should expect to be contacted by a staff member. Members of the public were also able to submit comments online and by mail. No written comments were received by the deadline. If anyone wishes to speak at a future council meeting, please check the meeting agenda and city website for information on how to register or submit written comments. Next on our agenda are presentations. Our first presentation is a Latino Engagement Task Force report. Would like to invite Danielle Villarreal, Community Relations Liaison, to introduce the presentation.
Mayor Huseman,
Yes.
the LET Task Force was planning on being here closer to 6:45 for the anticipated adjournment of the URA. So if you'd like to proceed to the other presentations as those members trickle in.
Sure. Let's go ahead and go to City Manager Tinklenberg to provide an update on the city's overall response to the COVID-19 crisis.
Thank you, Mayor. As of this past week, the Adams County vaccination rate was at 71.7% for one dose. 2 doses stood at 62.6%. Starting today, August 16, we reinstated the mask order in city facilities and on the job. And then also, I'll report on this in a little more detail later, but housing has obligated $692,000 for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. That's the extent of my report at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tinklenberg. Does anybody on council have any questions for Mr. Tinklenberg regarding the update on the COVID-19 crisis? Councilmember Noble.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Tinklenberg, could you talk more in depth about the decision regarding the recreation centers and everyone masking up?
The decision to require masks is based on the increase in infection rate in Adams County. And most of those infections at this point are now the Delta variant, which is much more contagious than the original version of COVID-19. And it also transmits to vaccinated individuals. And from what I've read in the scientific materials, it's also transmitted by individuals who are vaccinated. So we certainly are seeing a second wave or fourth wave, whatever, however they're counting those, it's another wave of infections. And this is a much more easily transmitted variant. And that's why we're requiring it in all city facilities and on the job. We have given exceptions for situations that involve public safety, where it's crucial for the officer to communicate. It is also possible for people, for example, like swimming and certain programs, to go without a mask. But again, we've asked employees to be judicious when they make use of those exceptions.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Tinklenberg? Councilmember Grimes?
Thank you, Mayor. Not so much a question, just a comment. I know this isn't a popular opinion, but I maintain at this point the vaccination rate isn't growing like we might like it to. And at some point, I think it becomes the decision of the individual whether or not they want to mask or not and assume the risk or not. And it does give me concern that we're putting that back in places like the rec center. You know, when this was in place before, and I would be in there, it looked to me like gymnastics was exempt from that, but that, you know, it seems funny that we would make an exemption there, but maybe not for people who are using cardio equipment. I just would really like to see it become the choice of the individual at this point, since we're reaching 70% plus vaccination rate.
Any other council members wishing to ask questions or comment? Seeing none, we thank you for your report, sir. We'll move on to the next presentation, which is going to be the 2021 Quarter 2 Work Plan Update. I'd like to invite Jason Rogers, Deputy City Manager, to make the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Good evening. I have John Borgelli assisting me tonight in running the presentation. So, as you all know, in our last presentation during Q1, we provided you all with updates with respect to targets, objectives on our 2021 work plan. Here tonight, I will run us through our Q2 target updates and where we stand going forward for the remainder of the year. Next slide, please. Bear with us one time. I think we're having some issues, John, with the presentation on the screen. There we go. Thank you. As stated, you know, as we've done in the past, we're going to want to go back through the updates that will take us through our 5 goals for 2021. Subsequent slides will list each target associated with that goal. We are also providing some examples, but there is much more detailed information in the report that was uploaded as an attachment to this item tonight for your review. I would say overall for 2021, the work plan is about 88.6% on track for completion at year's end, planned with 4.5% and completed, and 6.8% with some disruptions. And we'll get into some more detail around that. Next slide, please. Goal 1, as we all know, promote a balanced and thriving economy. With where we stand on that, we're at 100% on track. Target 1.1, next slide, please. Just a couple of highlights for you in this with economic development. We saw an increase of new project inquiries over the quarter from 49 to 80. Some highlights within that, we saw 14 retail inquiries, 31 primary employment inquiries, 2 existing inquiries for expansion, and 2 new startups. With respect to our Small Business Resource Center, we assisted a total of 28 clients. In that, what we assisted was on the inclusion of bilingual startup and expansion business guide, in addition to helping those with obtaining business licenses. We also worked within our BRE, that's our business retention and expansion efforts here at the city. We've contacted 11 businesses, and this is just an example, Bimbo Bakeries, which has most recently gone through a 7,400 square foot expansion, both in the Community Development Department's planning division and building division in seeking entitlements and permits and beginning construction. So that's a win. They're using their proofing oven to continue with, as part of this expansion, to continue with the production of their products, which obviously was in response to the COVID pandemic. So just another quality, I would say, example of what we've been able to help accomplish and to achieve in response to the COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. Target 1.2, create a sense of place. And in this, a couple of highlights come from one that you just most recently received on Mile High Greyhound Park, the hotel development there. We are seeing not just there with a mixing of the residential development and commercial opportunities, we're starting to see some of that traction be gained in other developments around the city in the areas of Aberdeen, Cutler's Farms, Murray Farms, and obviously Mile High Greyhound Park. Once again, these are just examples to be able to demonstrate that we are starting to gain a level of attraction and inquiry from a number of different development types to really try to create that live, work, play environment in our community. As it relates to the Economic Development Council Subcommittee kickoff, obviously we had initiated that effort at the beginning of June. We had that initial kickoff meeting, and what has spurred from that will be the Blue Ribbon Panel that will be taking its place, and we will be providing updates on that as we go forward. Last, we have the comp plan updates as it relates to this target. And as you see there, we've had a number of various stakeholder and community meetings that have been held by our consultant, but ultimately as well, over the past month, our staff has also spent time going out to outreach in the parks and being able to engage with our residents and being able to drive more of that participation within the process. One thing that will ultimately be brought forward to council just for its review and in being able to provide some feedback and thoughts on will be an existing conditions report. It looks at where we've been as a city, and it looks at potential trends that help us identify where we will be at and where we need to go. So that's still under review and will be brought forward shortly. Next slide, please. Target 1.3, catalyze development in key areas. Once again, talking about some of the highlights here, major redevelopment projects remain on track. Mile High Greyhound Park, as you heard earlier, there's a variety of work in different stages of construction at Mile High Greyhound Park, and the activity around the development is electric to say the least. We are receiving inquiries from a number of different commercial developments interested in wanting to partner and locate around the hotel site, but those are early stage and early days. But it just kind of goes to show about what happens when you have catalytic opportunities start to actually pop out of the ground. It brings that attraction. With respect to the Sand Creek Urban Renewal area formation, as you all might know, that has been a lengthy discussion that we have had over the last 6 to 8 months with CA Ventures in wanting to, I'll say, reposition the Sand Creek landfill for an industrial development, but in seeking the need for an urban renewal area to be formed to help support that. We went out to an RFP at the end of Q1, the beginning of Q2, and we were able to make a selection on July 31st for that vendor to assist staff on preparing a blight study, county impact, and taxing entity impact reports in the preparation of an urban renewal area plan. We remain on track with being able to accomplish that by year's end with our efforts. As it relates to new developments in early negotiations, Victory Crossing being one of an interest, as you all might notice, there is a sign out on the property at 56 and Central Park Boulevard stating that it is open for commercial opportunities. But we were also engaged with the developer on potential swapping of land that would assist the school district with its long-term visioning of operations and programs and innovation campus that would ultimately help us then continue to facilitate development in and around this area. And I'd say one of the last things that we have at the time of the report was also underneath of this target is that with the emergency rental assistance funds, we had reported out that we were at 33% obligation of those funds. We have now since eclipsed 50% of that obligation as it stands today. So making a positive impact in our community. Target 1.4, please. So improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the development review process, and this is somewhat of a double-edged sword. Right, we've been processing a record number of cases during Q1 of this year, sitting somewhere ranging between 170 to 193 cases. With that balancing of various cases, it's required us as a city to modulate our process in how we look at the rounds of review to be able to meet the bandwidth or be able to meet the capacity and have the bandwidth to ensure that we're meeting various needs. But at that same time, it has also allowed us and I would say forced us to look at modernization of our processes to stay ahead of the work as best as we possibly can. And some of that's been accomplished in our building safety division, in which they've looked at various permitting processes, the creation of new plan reviews that actually create for the contraction of our review times and or the removal thereof, which has allowed us to have our plan reviews and the issuance of COs to be on time. So once again, we are navigating that on a day-to-day basis, but once again, it is leading to some innovation in how we are trying to accomplish the work and also trying to be forthright with where we're at in the process of development. Goal number 2, please. So goal number 2, promote efficient and effective city government to improve levels of service. It encompasses most, but not all of the initiatives that we will talk about here shortly for IT, human resource, finance. And I would generally say that we are 91% on track with some minor disruptions. Next slide, please. So target 2.1, leveraging emerging technologies to enhance capabilities. As you can see there on the slide, several new technology projects have been started in Q2. Some of those go to Bluetooth assisted listening systems in the chambers, secure plex replacement, which is a paging and intercom system used by PD. In our Civic Center conference rooms, we've updated our audio-visual with various type of equipment for global technology chip shortage. We've had to make some adjustments. We're also well underway with our licensing, land use, and permitting software. This is generally a software that will allow for us as a city to make a true conversion from paper to electronic submittals, review, comments, and allowing both not only applicants, but also the general public of being able to have access to all information that's submitted to the community, submitted to the city at their fingertips within their own confines of their home without having to come in. So it's a very big leap for us here at the city with this update, but it's quite frankly becoming more standardized practice. And once again, I would say access for our community to having information so that they could be able to ask comments or give comments, provide feedback, or quite frankly, also allow for them to be able to make informed requests of us here at the staff. At the same time, we've looked at our CRM project refresh update that is out in its final stage of our RFP for bidding. We also have had a police department multi-factor authentication pilot testing in our courts, which allows data to be accessed outside of a secure location if certain IT security controls are in place. We've also have a e-ticketing crash module, which allows for complete accident reports electronically in the field, which allows storing of photos of crash scenes and creating tow slips and other customizable information and workflow as well. We've also completed an evaluation of our existing IT systems at Bison Ridge and Eagle Point. And there's several projects that are being worked on, even with our human resource online learning management system. The GIS team is working to build a snow trooper platform onto our city GIS system, which will assist with obviously during those operations and knowing where and how to deploy during weather events. The PD crime scene software upgrade is completed, which aids PD when working at a crime scene. We're also looking at a couple of expansion projects, which are for our SharePoint, which allow for internal communication and sharing of documentation, or even being able to share communication with external resources. We're also working on updates to our New World and NeoGov integration, expansion of our cartograph, which assists Public Works with its operations, and a record demand in PD is in the training phase, or record on demand, excuse me, in PD is in its training phase, and it's expected to be complete within the foreseeable future. Next slide, please. Target 2.2, a high-functioning city workforce. The new normal work environment, obviously, with COVID, we have jumped, as you can tell, into that completely in being able to have and implemented a new telework and hybrid work schedule. We've continued to work through our veterans internship program. We have signed the contract with ICMA and are now a host organization. We are checking with Buckley Air Force Base for interested veterans to participate in this program. To share with you, we're also continuing mapping of all of our human resource processes for Lean Sigma work. Our new hire orientation videos are currently being produced by our new videographer. And training, generally, we have 22 classes, communication, lean processes, diversity and inclusion. And I would say generally how that has been impactful to the city. Our vacancy rate for positions in Q2 is doing quite well. We are at 6.1, we're at 6.16%. Next, please. So providing responsive action to council identified priorities, we've been utilizing the Microsoft Planner platform to help track and allow for, I would say, more faster, fuller, meaningful responses to council action items. The total number as of August 4, so this obviously these numbers are somewhat dated. We had 208 with 44 open and active council action items. And in comparison to 2020, we had 366. I would say as we looked at some of that initial data for 2021 as far as popular themes, parking, trailers, et cetera, weeds, speed studies, road repairs, dumping and public services were, I would say, the top themes or the type items that we had seen come from council action requests. Target 2.4, please. Act in a transparent and accountable manner. Once again, we've increased information to our public for both English and Spanish speaking individuals. We have had 6 press releases, 54 news items, and 5 community workshops, 3 in English and 2 in Spanish. So once again, really trying to expand our transparency and connection with the community in broad fashion. And then generally, we've had 99 core requests that we've processed within I would say a 98 to 100% mark of hitting the deadline of getting that information back out to the requester. Target 2.5, please. So secure a sustainable financial future. We've had our auditors that were on site until June 7th, and the city received a clean, unmodified opinion, which was presented to the council on June 28th. That financial audit and the comprehensive annual financial report, now called the ACFR, previously called the CAFR, is now out for public consumption and is online on the city's website as well. Our tax division has been working to increase tax compliance awareness in a number of different ways by providing taxpayer educational opportunities, and enhanced online resources, tools, or by directly engaging licensed businesses, we've been able to have completed 53 audit engagements and assessment of 66 audits in process. So to that, the collections through Q2 have been slightly below 2.8 million year to date. So to that as well, we've seen about 61.5% decrease in delinquent tax filings. So from 707 to 272. So this beats our goal of a 40% reduction that we had identified as part of the work plan. Next slide, please. Goal 3, develop and maintain the public infrastructure to improve community appearance and encourage continued development. I think generally, right, this speaks to the built environment. This speaks to infrastructure improvements and being able to meet the needs of our community. And I say right now we are showing a 90% on track with some disruptions. When I think infrastructure can be both physical, but it also can be programmatic. So as we go to slide 3.1, right, we start to talk about developing educational infrastructure. Our city manager spoke earlier about a partnership opportunity that we have been working on with Adams 14 at the Mile High Greyhound Park for a potential culinary arts program. I would say, obviously, we're also looking at other partnership opportunities at Victory Crossing with the school district with respect to an innovation campus. So once again, trying to support that programmatic infrastructure as much as the, I would say, built environment and public right-of-way infrastructure as well. Target 3.2, please. Improve physical infrastructure. And some of the things that we have highlighted, obviously with Dolly Server solar lighting project, that's moving forward. There's significant interagency cooperation between ourselves, between South Adams County Water and Sand, between other entities, ensuring that we can continue to keep moving forward with that project. We've also have continued to increase our coordination at the development review level and review of infrastructure projects with South Adams County Water and Sand. As you see there, particularly around our CIPP planning to ensure consistency. Target 3.3, please. Thank you. So engineer a safe built environment. PW has been conducting assessments of bridges and Course A signal poles. We have applied for a number of grants, particularly Colorado Boulevard improvements, additional money for US 85 and 120th interchange, additional money for 88th Avenue improvements. And staff is working with community relations and HOAs to provide community reminders and announcements for upcoming seasonal and or high violations with respect to overhanging branches and weeds. Next slide, please. Complete all approved phases of CIPP on time, budget, and to standard. We have an upcoming kind of draft project management training program that's in order to help us assist in streamlining our operations. That training is to occur Q3 of this year. But as it stands and as you all receive that CIPP report monthly from staff, that's another tool that's assisting us in ensuring that we are hitting target 3.4. Goal 4, please. So promote resident health, safety, and education. I would say for goal 4, we are at 88% on track or completed with some disruptions. And if we can move to slide 4.1, creating aesthetically pleasing neighborhoods. And as you can see here, these are kind of some of the big things that we're seeing. Parker Trailer Ordinance has passed. Police Department, Community Relations is beginning enforcement and public outreach on a number of different items related to parking and or weeds. Code enforcement has been active and making 663 contacts with our community members as it relates to either citations, violations, and/or just general education and outreach as it relates to changes in property maintenance. And the Housing Authority is administering, at the time, 135 vouchers due to, I would say, its activity and its ability of administration. The Colorado Department of Housing has further released additional housing vouchers of up to 23 to the Housing Authority because of its administration, increasing our, I would say, our meaningful duty to our residents in need, up from 135 to 158. So that's a feather in the cap for the Housing Authority. Next, please. And I would share with you the Housing Authority is anticipated to grow from 158 to 210 in the calendar year 2020. So target 4.2, provide recreational opportunities. Obviously, we've had some program expansion limitations due to COVID, but as we're starting to transition into the new normal, right, we are working through those dynamics to be able to continue to meet the needs for our community based on use for amenities. As you all know, we've also been most recently granted the Adams County Open Space Grant in the amount of $960,000 for Monaco Park renovations. And I would say a couple of other examples kind of going back into programs, right, was the opening of the Paradise Island pool during Memorial Day weekend. There's been a number of kind of also neighborhood outreach events combined with our Cultural Council Summer Concert Series that has been underway in July and August. Examples of additional grants. We have had the submission for outdoor fit court, and then obviously outreach materials for homelessness as well, to be able to secure some support. Slide 4.3, please. So safeguard resident health and well-being. Oil and gas land development code updates were adopted. You all received a presentation from the Public Works Director with respect to Keep Commerce City Clean, which is obviously an interdepartmental working group developing solutions on how to, I would say, look at taking pride in the aesthetic and beautification of our city across a number of different disciplines. You all also received a presentation from our community navigator for homelessness to provide you with an update on efforts internal to the city, but also in partnership with Adams County to be able to have a macro and micro impact in regards to this issue. Next slide, please. Enhance personal safety. We have a couple of things highlighted on the slide, but I would say that, you know, to that first bullet, PD staff is using a domestic violence checklist to ensure that investigations are thorough and consistent. The DA's office has started a new domestic violence unit and is evaluating this checklist for countywide distribution. Obviously, staffing continues to be a challenge. Auto thefts is obviously an uphill battle nationally. It's also been a battle here in Commerce City, but regionally and nationally as well. Now, these are low priority crimes for prosecutors. Most received in Commerce City are considered misdemeanors, and we generally issued a summons to appear in court for these matters, but then are most likely then released. The department adopted some social media campaigns toward some community education to have a more positive impact on this category of crime. I would also share that vehicle trespasses of unlocked vehicles is experiencing an 8% growth rate as well. So the department is issuing clubs to certain identified high theft vehicles for their use as a prevention tool and resource regarding this matter. Next slide, please. Enhance community safety, priority 0 and 1 call response times. We remain consistent with the level of service standard. We're utilizing geographic supervision to help aid in response time of keeping it standardized. We're also looking at proactive community policing projects to minimize the quality of life related calls that we're seeing with respect to those priority 0 and 1. We are trying to increase community engagement. Area commanders are holding quarterly virtual community meetings. I would say with those virtual community meetings that are being conducted, right, is really discuss community issues, solicit feedback, and provide information on crime-related issues. Residents' primary concerns, from what we're hearing from those meetings, are parking issues and chronic traffic conditions. Next slide, please. Goal 5, improve community involvement and trust. With where we're at, we're standing at 100% on track or completed. Target 5.1, which is to increase civic pride. In Q2, we had a Memorial Day event ceremony with approximately 40 attendees. In Q3, we had the July 4th celebration. We had cultural councils concerts in the park. Then the upcoming Kurt Holland Memorial Golf Tournament. The cultural master plan, as you see in the second bullet point, is anticipated to be posted by Q3 of this year, and being able to hire a consultant to assist us with that cultural master plan. Target 5.2, improve citizen interaction. We continue to maintain an active web and social media presence. We've been driving media engagement rate by posting creative and effective content on our city's website, and effective content and social media channels as well to increase the number of daily visitors and subscribers. For example, in Q2, the city's Facebook page reached a total of 71,000 people, averaging 792 users per day. And we have a following of 8,000 plus or minus followers, and a total of 24,985 engaged people, basically meaning like, comment, or sharing a post. We have about 30,000, we had about 30,000 unique users who visited our city website during that time span as well. Slide, thank you. An inclusive community. As you can see here, the Americans with Disability Act, Diversity and Inclusion Commission, and live Spanish interpretation. These were items that were identified in 2019 audit and have been worked on in 2020 and 2021, and have also been requested in the budget for 2022 and ongoing. The diversity, equity, and inclusion meets on the last Wednesday of every month, and is comprised of 11 community and 2 council members. In Q2, they gathered information, are analyzing community demographic data, and are developing their own bylaws, researching programs in other communities, and are meeting consistently with our community relations, human resources team, and obviously members within the city manager's office to identify several areas of interest to explore. Spanish interpretation, we had 19 meetings with a total of 45 Spanish participants. And the last slide for the presentation, target 5.4, improve citizen participation. With the hiring of our new videographer, we are in the production of both bilingual, I'll say digital media, and also video productions. And we're also looking at posting 9 videos, or we had 9 videos posted in Q2, with a combined views totaling 10,632 during that time period. So we're going to continue to keep digging in and continue to keep expanding our use of both obviously video production, I would say media production that we can provide, both social and digital, to continue to make citizen participation more efficient, effective, and streamlined for all of our community members. And with that, that ends my presentation. Mayor and Council, open for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Councilmember Wadiola?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I just have two questions. On the parks grants and Monaco Park, are we putting any inclusive playground equipment? And how is that process, or is that in the plans? I know we talked about it to try to put as many pieces in the parks, and if it's not, how could council help with that to get more parks like Veterans Park?
So that's a great question, sir. Where we're at in the stage with particularly the Monaco Park renovation grant is that we have gone out to an RFP to secure a design vendor. So what we can do as staff is to ensure the communication that once we set off to design those renovations, that we're looking at the inclusivity of I would say, an all-user functional play equipment and or just design for all of our represented members of the community.
Thank you. I just want to get ahead of it because that wasn't the process with the Veterans Park. We had to keep going and saying, this is what we really want. And I think we have set the bar high for our city for all future parks and not going backwards. So definitely keep that in mind when we're looking at whether it's Monaco, I know we're going to be doing Fairfax and all the other parks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that. The last thing is on slide 22, and I thought we weren't going to be using Keep Carmen City Clean tagline. Have we came up with something else that we could use?
Yes, sir. I think at the timing of our report, we had this conducted and concluded prior to your meeting in which you had received that. So that naming of this is just a carryover, but I would say we as staff have met internally, and it's loud and clear that we need to do a better job of a nomenclature around this effort that really, like I said, gets back to pride and beautification of our city, and looking at that in a much more holistic perspective. So with your next update in Q3, we will definitely have a different name brought forward to the council.
I appreciate it. Yeah, just because if we keep putting it on different documents and we keep using that, it's going to stick, and we want the new slogan. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Councilmember Alan Thomas?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Rogers, for the presentation. I have a few questions. On slide number 6 regarding the Sand Creek URA, I believe at a previous study session, is the property 48th and Forest, was that Denver, or is it 48th and Ivy?
So it touches 48th and Forest, and it also has frontage along 48th and Ivy. In particular to your question, ma'am, the west side of 48th, or the west side of Forest, is considered the jurisdictional boundaries of the city and county of Denver. The east side of Forest Avenue north of, Forest Avenue north of 48th is considered the jurisdictional boundaries of the city of Commerce City.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Then on slide 20, it stated code enforcement made 663 contacts. Do we have a breakdown of like what ward, how many was in each ward?
So good question, ma'am. Yes, we do. I do not have that on at the tip of my fingers, but I will share with you that code enforcement will be coming before the council in September. That will be able to provide a breakdown of the type of violation, the type of citation, the type of complaint. And we'll also then be able to share to you a breakdown of which ward and the frequency of that ward in which those issues are arising. So you will be able to get very detailed information during that presentation.
Okay, so by chance, then you probably don't know out of those 663, how many are repeat offenders?
No, ma'am.
Because I hope that comes up in the presentation in September, because when you find out, will you let the mayor and other city council members know if there's any ordinance regarding repeat offenders, if that can be included as well? Because if so, I feel that possibly could be something that's looked into if it's not brought up.
I do believe we'll be able to provide you some information as it relates to the number of repeat offenders. I don't know how accurate that might be based on the data at hand, but we can at least look into that, ma'am. I'm looking to our city attorney with respect to an ordinance on repeat offenders. As it stands today, we do not have an ordinance with respect to repeat offenders and escalation of issues, but Robert might correct me in my statement.
I won't correct you. However, I will note, when it comes to enforcement, multiple code violations within, that are civil infractions, as are code enforcement issues, multiple violations for the same issue within a certain period of time do become a misdemeanor offense. So there is an escalation of potential penalties there, and there is also a potential for escalation of fines under the fine schedule currently adopted.
Thank you. Then on slide 21, back to the Monaco Park renovation, will we get like a more breakdown, a thorough breakdown of what's involved, and will the renovation improve the safety for the residents that live in the area?
Bear with me one moment, ma'am, as I just think through your question. So is the question that you're asking that as part of the grant funds, will there be an evaluation of how to also provide safety improvements with that?
Yes, exactly, especially for the residents around that area, since it's a yearly ongoing topic of concern.
I do believe, ma'am, it is something that we can raise as we go through the design process. You know, like I said earlier, we are still within the infancy of this project, having just received the grant funds, and we'll be going out for an RFP to secure a design vendor. That can be an item that we can raise. And as we look at the relevant costs associated with all of the improvements, then be able to bring some information back to the council as to those design efforts.
Thank you. Like I said, because I keep stressing, like I said, the safety of those residents in Monaco Park and Pioneer Park as well. So I hope safety is addressed. And then on slide 23, it talked about the club being open up, or residents can get access to that. But unfortunately, officers were handing them out at the national night out that took place, with the one that I hosted, my family and I. And we had about 20 residents that qualified for the club. And since the officers had to leave during that time, we know how the police officers are going to reach out to the community to get them distributed again, since that was one opportunity. But for those listening in that owns one of the vehicles, how are we reaching out to residents to let them know about the club?
Thank you for that question, ma'am. I don't have the particular details on the continued, I would say, pushing of the communication out to the community with respect to distribution of the club. We can circle back with PD and obviously our community relations team to see what their plan of attack is and get that message out to the council and ultimately as well to the community as well, with where we stand with how to continue to provide that service.
Thanks. And if you can also try to put it in the newspaper, not just online, for those that don't have access, or if there's a location they can pick up an application.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah, that was all the questions I had. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilmember Noble.
Thank you for all the great work during these very trying times, of course. This is a process question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking about the goals that you ran through and the fact that this city council established new goals earlier this year. These are not the same goals. These are goals from previously 2018. When do the new goals go into effect? And what happens to the ongoing projects that were under other goals? You just accomplish them in advance, or it's a running total?
So the new goals were set for 2022, and so the budget for 2022 is built around those goals. These existing goals continue through the end of this year. They were set previously last year by council, or not set. They were set years ago and then kept by council last year. In terms of the projects that are ongoing, those are incorporated in under the new goals for 2022, for whatever is not completed in 2021.
Thank you for answering my question, Mr. Tinklenberg.
Any other questions for staff regarding the presentation on the Q2 work plan update? Seeing none, thank you very much for all the information, sir. We will move on to our next presentation. Would like to invite Danielle and the LAT task force to come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. My name is Daniela Villarreal. I'm the Community Relations Liaison. Tonight, I'm going to have Cultivando staff and members come up and join me for a presentation. This is going to be the Latino Engagement Task Force. This is the third time that we've done this task force. Just this past Friday, we celebrated their graduation for the members who went through this task force. This is a city initiative, and it is with the purpose of building a stronger and more inclusive Latino community. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Rocio Franco and Olga Mijares to come up here and help present.
Good evening. My name is Rocio Franco. I'm the Associate Director for Cultivando. And I'm here to present information and share a little bit about the Latino Engagement Task Force. In collaboration with Commerce City and building a stronger and more inclusive community, Cultivando has supported and facilitated the Latino Engagement Task Force. This has been a monthly process to meet, learn, and make recommendations to city leadership. And the city leadership has done a remarkable job of beginning to implement many of the proposed activities, policies, and practices suggested by the Latino Task Force. The goal of the cohorts was to obtain constructive and solution-focused participation on how Commerce City can better engage, involve, and meaningfully serve the Latino community. We, Cultivando, are a local nonprofit. We are here, centered in Commerce City, serving Adams County as well. And we have helped, and we started this process with the city back in December of 2015. We have done 3 cohorts so far. The first one we initiated on 2015, the second one on 2017, and we concluded last Friday with the 3rd cohort. The mission of this cohort is identified issues, topics of interest for the Latino community, document real and perceived barriers to participation with the city, recognize how Latinos with the city prefer receive information and increase effective communication, and so many others, like continue to maintain positive relationships and participation with former LED participants, that creating more community and more relationships of trust. The process that we have done is identifying community members in Commerce City who are mono or bilingual Spanish speakers. And Cultivando has helped through a screening process with focus on collaboration and building positive, constructive, forward-facing relationships with the city. We have done 8 sessions of 90 minutes, monthly meetings, including LED members to bring perspectives and experience as LED members as well. And those meetings are conducted in Spanish using interpretation and translation to English speakers as needed as well. And in the process of that, we also have done surveys just to receive feedback from the participants during the process. The city liaison provided feedback from meetings to city staff and answer any city-related questions from participants. And Cultivando staff has helped with the city liaison completing with the assessment report that we have provided to you, city management, and other departments as well. The lead outcomes, I can mention that we are proud of what we have accomplished and submit the following recommendations to Commerce City to build a stronger and more inclusive community. You will notice that many of the recommendations are to continue to implement and support the important changes that the city has been working on since LET 1. And some of them are continue improvement in language access, cultural events, including activities that celebrate the Latino culture, continue improvement in community building opportunities between the Latino community and Commerce City Police Department, continue engagement and communication between Commerce City and the Latino community, and co-development of parks and community safety strategies with community members, police department, and parks and recreation staff. Cohort number 3, it was also 8 sessions. We started back in October of 2020. We just concluded in June 18, 2021. And members discuss and explore various city topics that they were of their interest. These topics included city organizational overview, police department experiences, victim services, city sponsor events. Additional topics emerged like water safety, park safety, stray animals, concerns with schools, and much more. The objectives of this task force was identified issues, topics of interest to the Latino community in Commerce City, document real and perceived barriers to participation in city activities and events, recognize how Latinos within the city prefer to receive information and how, and determine the effectiveness of existing communication tools. Also, we have done surveys, and these surveys provided additional information for the final report. And a lot of these are, participants found their experience to be very useful and informative, and also knowing each other in community. Most of them, they have lived in the same community and not necessarily knew each other. Things learned while participating and led was different programs and services offered through various departments. Also, they expressed the city meets some of the community needs but can improve others. And some of them are like barriers to the Latino community faces when having a specific access to the city of Commerce City, language barriers to information, and bilingual staff members. And I want to share my time with Ola Mijares before I ask her if you have any questions. She's a lead participant for this year, and she would like to share with you a little bit of her experience being part of this cohort.
Good evening. My name is Olga Mijares. I'm a resident of Commerce City, the core city. I'm also a proud participant of LET 3. I'm here on behalf of our class to thank you for giving us a voice, for listening, and for providing a safe space to learn, to be heard, to voice our concerns as well as our joys. It was such an amazing experience. We learned many things from the history of Commerce City to the planning of the future of Commerce City. And we also want to thank you and your great staff, very dedicated staff, who they attended every meeting to guide us and to answer our questions. And we hope that you continue this partnership with us, as we felt very empowered by your support. As sometimes as Latina members, we feel isolated. We feel we walk this journey alone, but we completely felt your partnership and your support. So on behalf of Let 3, I want to really thank you for everything and for your support.
Thank you, Olga. Cultivando hopes to continue the relationship with the city and to see more follow-up on the reports and recommendations to the 3 LED cohorts have made. This can be a great way to celebrate the success of the task force and show the community that there is continued communication between the Latino community and the city of Commerce City. Can attend questions if you have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Congratulations on the graduation of another cohort. That's great to see happening in our city, and really appreciate all the work that you put into that. Anybody on council have any questions? Councilmember Guardiola?
Thank you, Mayor. And again, thank you for all the work you do with LET. I had the opportunity to attend the graduation, and again, they spoke about some of the things they learned, and I hope City Council really looks at the report, because we can learn from a lot of our voiceless residents who feel voiceless. And this is an outlet for them to bring issues that they're going through day to day, learning about the city. Again, congratulations on the cohort number 3. And I hope we could take up some of the issues that I think we would be surprised that they're not just Latino issues. They're Commerce City issues, right? And we could continue to work with organizations like Cultivando and the LET program to bring those to the light. So again, we appreciate your guys' time and doing this in collaboration with the staff and the city. Thank you.
Councilmember Guardiola? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Madera?
Yeah, I want to thank both of you and everyone who participated in this task force over the years. And I guess my question is kind of a 2-part question. You know, what recurring themes did you notice that people brought up repeatedly in these meetings? You know, I'm kind of reading through your summary and see some recurring themes there. And then, you know, the second part's for staff. How did we address these, and you know, what are we doing about those concerns?
Thank you for asking that question. I think for us, as the Latino Engagement Task Force, is to continue having opportunities and roundtables where decisions are made, to bring community members and be able to express their necessities. And I think that's one of the ways that we can provide not only a space and opportunities to express, but also build a relationship with them. So it's their mission to continue these cohorts to keep expanding those opportunities with community members.
And then, do you think it'd be helpful to have like a council member or someone present to, you know, listen in on the concerns that the community members have?
Yes, definitely. In fact, we have community meetings also with the police department. We can create that space also for city council members to come and have that direct conversation with community members as well.
And then for staff, you know, what did we get out of these meetings, and how did we address them?
Cultivando also could be a good ally to also do the outreach and engagement with community members through promotoras already known in the community and having that experience already working for many years with community members. So if it's something that the city may need in the future, we're more than happy to come and collaborate with you to make those spaces happening.
And to answer your question, Councilman Madera, I think the idea is that after this report, now it's time as staff to take some time to review and look at it and implement maybe some suggestions, some of those reoccurring themes that those Latino community members brought up, and how we can incorporate that into our work. So I think it's a process and where we can review and implement that. But we have seen that from the cohort number 1 and 2, we've definitely had successes from their recommendations. And I look forward to seeing what comes out of the report now from this last cohort.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it'd be beneficial for us to see some of those recommendations come through and, build work plans around them. And, some things we're already working on, seeing homelessness come up a lot, saw issues of cleanliness on our streets and street sweeping, and a lot of other, citywide issues, as Councilman Guardiola alluded to earlier. But I think, we have to act on that, and also we have to report back, right? We have to let the citizens that took the time out of their day to be part of this task force and be engaged and let us know everything that they're seeing and let them know how we're responding to their concerns.
Councilmember Guardiola?
Thank you, Mayor. And just to piggy off that, I think Deputy City Manager Roger, this would be perfect to add to our work plan. Looking at some of their concerns fit under 5.4, 5.3, 5.2, and that way, when we're doing those updates, we're also letting the residents know that we are listening to them. So just a suggestion on how it could be in our work plan. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, would like to thank you again for coming and giving us this presentation as well as all the work. I was recently reading an article about Adams County and the transformation that is taking place and how it's really a model for the rest of the country. And part of that transformation has taken place right here in Commerce City and as a result of the work that your organization is doing. So just want to extend my appreciation for everything that you're doing to help community members in our city feel more welcome and feel more like this is their home too. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you for your time.
Our next presentation is going to be the comp plan update. I'd like to invite Jamie Rice, our city planner, to come up and introduce the presentation.
Good evening, Council. This is Jamie Rice for Planning Staff, presenting to you the August Comprehensive Plan updates. Just real quick, we'll just refresh of what our comprehensive plan is. It's a long-range vision for what the community wants to be, typically in a 20 to 30-year horizon. We're looking out at 2045 for this comp plan update. Here's the schedule listing steps 1 through 8. We have gone through all of the steps, such as the project initiation. We had a kickoff back in January. Community engagement. This is a step that runs throughout the plan, and it never ends. Market and demographic analysis, along with the existing conditions analysis, something that our former director, Jason Rogers, previously mentioned. We are right around these steps 4 and 5 with the community vision, goals, and objectives. Coming in the future will be the sub-area plans, the preliminary citywide plans and policies, as well as the plan adoption and documents. So within the past month, we've had some really awesome additional outreach that we have done for the comp plan.
with the Concert in the Park event, staff was able to go out and actually do some in-person participation, which we had not previously had any participation in person due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we were able to get out to a few events. We did the Veterans Memorial Concert in the Park, as well as the Concert in the Parks at Frontera and Fairfax. We recently did an additional outreach with Cultivando at one of their regularly scheduled meetings, and we will be following up with Cultivando in order to gain some more feedback from the Hispanic and Latino community. As of right now, we are reviewing the existing conditions report. We had sent that to our consultant, Housel Levine, based on comments from staff, the Technical Advisory Committee, as well as the Community Advisory Committee and the staff working group. Took a look at that report, and we got some really good feedback from staff and other members of the community. So we've sent over those revisions, and so we are taking a look at that report, and once it's in a final condition, we will bring that forward to City Council as well as Planning Commission for a study session. Would just like to remind that this existing conditions report is not the plan, and it is not the updated plan. It's just a report that shows the existing conditions and will help guide the comp plan update as well. So if you do see something that's not in the existing conditions report, just please remember that it does not mean that it won't be in the comp plan in the end. Additionally, we're working on some additional targeted outreaches to some populations, again, with Cultivando and some other populations that we were able to reach. So our next steps are to refine key issues for the city. We've done some outreach in terms of some mapping exercises and some dot exercises at the Concert in the Park. So we will be looking at some of those questions that we asked and diving a little bit deeper into those questions and refining some questions to potentially get some more feedback from the community. We're kind of really taking advantage of this opportunity that we have to do some in-person participation, just because the participation is always better in person. So we'll continue with those targeted outreaches while we wrap up the conditions report and plan those study sessions with Planning Commission and City Council. Again, if you'd like to know more about how you can get involved, continue to share any comprehensive plan news with the community. If you follow the city on Facebook, sharing those events are always really helpful because your constituents probably take a look at what you're sharing. And so it's always helpful when we can get that out to more people who might not follow the city's page, but might follow your page. Completing a survey online. This can, if you haven't done already, which I hope you have, this will just gives us some more background data on those existing conditions. And again, sharing social media posts that are advertising events, as well as participating in scheduled study sessions. That ends my presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions that the council might have.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate the update and all the work that you guys have been doing, and it was great to see you out at the Music in the Park events and able to capture those residents that were there to get their opinions and input on the comp plan. And I think one of the things that is really being done very well right now is the citizen engagement and really making sure that they have a voice in what goes in the comp plan, and just really appreciate all the work going into that. I can tell you, never in my life before have I ever seen a city doing that level of effort to make sure that people have a voice. And so just really want to reiterate my appreciation for that. Councilmember Noble.
Thanks so much, Ms. Rice. I noticed when I was at the at Frontera Park that the big board that asks residents to vote on different issues had a question about a downtown. And it seemed to me that the question about a downtown might be confusing to people. They might think of it such as a Denver downtown, as opposed to a gathering place, a meeting place, an area with entertainment, restaurants, someplace that people could be together, because people were saying, no, they don't want a downtown. And I think that may need some reworking, and I'm concerned about the number of votes that have come in against a downtown, because I'm not sure they really meant that they were opposed to a downtown. They were opposed to a Denver downtown. but not the kind of walkability sort of downtown perhaps. There's something that could be in Derby or something that could be in the north. So I just wanted to point that out. But thank you very much for being out there and doing this. It's going to be really interesting to see the results. Thanks.
Absolutely. And just to respond to that comment, staff had the exact same experience with that question and heard a lot of confusion, and maybe we weren't getting the right data across of what we wanted to. So we have examined that question, and going forward, if we do use that question again, we might rephrase it to something along the lines of an activity center or a community neighborhood center, just so that the thought of a big downtown does not get in their head. So, but I appreciate that comment.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, thank you again for your time this evening. Appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the consent agenda, which is pretty extensive, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute recess. All right, looks like everybody is back, so we will reconvene the meeting. Our next agenda item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that are routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, and non-controversial. They are presented to council for a single motion and vote. Any member of council may ask to remove a specific item for further discussion and a separate vote. Tonight, there are 16 items listed under the consent agenda. Before we get into talking about that, I do need to confirm with Mayor Pro Tem Frank, council members Allen Thomas and Wadiola, that you have reviewed the July 19th public hearings and are eligible to vote on ordinances Z-761 and Z-941. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I have.
Councilmember Allen Thomas?
Yes, I have.
Councilmember Wadiola?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We will proceed. Does anybody on council wish to remove an item off the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilmember Noble.
I'd like to pull Resolution 2021-58.
That was 2021-50? Which one was that again?
58.
58, okay. Resolution 2021-58, is that the only one? Is that all? Okay, I thought you had indicated you wanted to pull two of them, so. Does anybody else on council wish to pull an item off the consent agenda for further discussion or consideration? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as modified, which is removing Resolution 2021-58. Mayor Pro Tem?
So moved.
Councilmember Hurst? Second. I have a motion and a second to approve this consent agenda as modified, which is removing Resolution 2021-58. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we will have the city clerk read the titles and take a roll call vote.
Colorado Independent Congressional Redistricting Commission Letter. Ordinance 2335, an ordinance amending the 2021 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by appropriating portions of the unencumbered fund balances of the General Fund and Facilities Fund, transferring designated funds portions of the unencumbered fund balance in the General Fund, and reaffirming certain prior appropriations for a total amount of $2,688,924 and authorizing the expenditure thereof. Resolution 2338, an ordinance amending, or Ordinance 2338, an ordinance amending the 2021 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the first tranche of American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funding in the amount of $5,262,512.50 and the appropriation of such funds as revenue replacement for government operations as authorized by law. Ordinance 2339, an ordinance amending the 2021 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Colorado Department of Transportation CDOT grant funds for $760,000 for the construct a replacement of the Potomac Street O'Brien Canal Bridge and the authorization of the expenditure thereof. Resolution 2340 and Ordinance 2340, an ordinance amending the 2021 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Colorado Department of Transportation grant leaf program in the amount of $10,000 for DUI enforcement efforts and the authorization of the expenditures thereof. Ordinance 2342, an ordinance repealing and reenacting Section 5-4500 of the Commerce City Revised Municipal Code to adopt the 2020 National Electrical Code and amending the city's previously adopted residential code to incorporate applicable standards of the 2020 National Electrical Code. Ordinance 2343, an ordinance amending the Commerce City Revised Municipal Code regarding the authority of certain persons designated as peace officers to enforce violations of the charter and ordinances of the City of Commerce City. Resolution 2021-56, a resolution authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement by and between the City of Commerce City and the Colorado Department of Transportation for right-of-way acquisition cost sharing for US 85 on 120th Avenue Interchange Project. Resolution 2021-59, a resolution amending Council Policy CP16 to modify the City Council agenda regarding notice council business items. Resolution 2021-60, a resolution finding substantial compliance of annexation petition in case AN-259 Can-Am annexation and setting a public hearing to determine eligibility for such annexation. Resolution 2021-65, a resolution approving a quitclaim deed in favor of LGI Homes, Colorado, LLC, to return dedicated property and portions of the property in Second Creek Farm, filing number 1, First Amendment. Resolution 2021-70, a resolution authorizing and supporting the Main Street project in the City of Commerce City, Colorado. Resolution 2021-74, resolution appointing members to designated boards and commissions of Commerce City. Resolution or Ordinance Z-761-03-21, an ordinance approving the Buckley Crossing PUD Amendment Number 1, amending residential densities and modifying permitted land uses located on the property at the southeast corner of East 120th Avenue and High Plains Parkway in Commerce City, Colorado. Ordinance Z-941-17-19-21, an ordinance approving the Mile High Greyhound Park PUD Zone Document Amendment 1, amending the commercial and institutional uses on parcels A and B located on the property bound by East 64th Avenue to the north, East 62nd Avenue to the south, Elm Street to the east, and Highways 2 and 85 to the west in Commerce City, Colorado. Your vote should be open.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. That passes unanimously 9-0. Councilmember Noble, you requested to remove Resolution 2021-58. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Huseman. The only reason I had this item pulled is because I wanted to draw attention to it for our residents' sakes. Lots of folks have talked to us over time about questions regarding economic development in Commerce City. And this is an opportunity for residents and business people to get more involved in the process. It's establishing a blue ribbon economic development committee. And we all look forward to seeing the applications that come in. There would be 2 large landowners or business owners, 3 medium, 3 small businesses, including Spanish language, a realtor, representative from economic development, representative from the Urban Renewal Authority, and a representative from community development. In addition, we will have 2 council members and 2 residents who have experience in economic development or marketing or something related to that. So thank you very much, and I enjoyed working with Michelle Claymore on this as well, who is our Economic Development Director. So I would move to approve Resolution 2021-58.
Councilmember Hurst.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2021-58. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, will the city clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Resolution 2021-58, a resolution establishing a blue ribbon economic development panel. Your vote should be open.
And that passes 9-0. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to public hearings. Our public hearing is on Resolution 2021-51 and 2021-52 for the Buckley Crossing Metro Districts. Tonight's public hearing is a continuation of these items from August 2nd and will be consolidated hearing on the Buckley Crossing amended service plan and the proposed service plan for new Buckley Crossing Metropolitan Metro District Number 2. This time I will open the public hearing and invite John Borgelli, Management Analyst, to make the presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council. So this is a continuation of what we discussed 2 weeks ago. Per your direction and based on the discussion that evening at the hearing, we went back and renegotiated the service plans with the applicants. I'll be presenting tonight just those changes from what we presented 2 weeks ago. The original presentation from 2 weeks ago is available at the end of this presentation as an appendix, as is the original communication. So again, the background, the initial hearing was 2 weeks ago, and we did take what you said into consideration and renegotiated the service plan, both the amended service plan for the Buckley Crossing Metro District and the new application for Buckley Crossing Metro District Number 2. We will only be presenting these major changes this evening. So first, the authority limits. This is just some of what we included. I'll talk to it just very quickly, but if you do have specific questions, we can answer those. So including requirements of SB 21262, this is the new special district law that's being considered by the state legislature currently. Also highlights the public benefit of the construction of High Plains Parkway. Importantly, if property within the district is sold for a non-taxable use, the district must either find that the sale of this property and that its inability to then collect taxes from it will not have a material impact in its ability to discharge the debt at its stated mill levy, or it must impose a fee on the purchaser to recoup that money to ensure that it does not have an effect on its ability to discharge the debt. Land acquisitions by the district from a developer must be based on an independent appraisal, and it requires public improvements to be certified by an independent professional engineer as to inventory and cost. Also on the financial side of things, capping that maximum debt mill levy at 50 mills and the O&M mill levy at 10 mills in the existing district. And the mill levy adjustments will be based on 2021 for the debt mill levy only. The operations and maintenance mill levy is excluded from that Gallagherization adjustment. It also includes a 40-year debt mill levy limit that cannot be extended even if it's by a resident-controlled board. There's no ability to override that maximum debt mill levy, and also lowering the cap on the interest rate and the underwriting discount from 18% and 5% respectively to 12% and 3%. Importantly, also some stricter guidelines on governance and transparency. It specifies that the additional annual report contents and authorizes the city to be able to post this report out. A prohibition on including marketing materials or ads for the development within the district's boundaries or within its website, so keeping that website really focused on providing information for the residents and providing that transparency. Also, some additional requirements on district meetings that they must meet at least quarterly. There must be an option for virtual attendance. And also, for certain very important items, that they must be held on a weeknight. A lot of these meetings for other districts are held during weekdays, during working hours, and some people are unable to attend. So if there is going to be something that requires public input, that be held on a weeknight to ensure that everyone can be there if they want to be. Also, a prohibition on rules, regulations, or agreements that diminish or remove the ability of the end users, the homeowners, to be appointed or elected to the board. And then finally, some city oversight measures, requiring that there be a written opinion from an external financial advisor within the service plan, opportunity for administrative review of revenue pledge or reimbursement agreements to another metropolitan district or a developer-controlled entity. So this is trying to limit that ability to have finance and control districts, that sort of structure. Prohibiting the formation of the authorities or other entities without council approval, again, towards that same goal. And prohibiting the imposition of special assessments without council approval. Requiring the payment of an annual oversight fee, and that's if council then, through a future ordinance, does impose or set a fee for an annual oversight fee that would go towards paying staff either for additional positions or outside contract help in order to actually be able to implement these regulations throughout more metro districts. Establishing more clear terms for material modifications and establishing sanctions as well. Those are the changes that we implemented and that are present in the service plan in front of you this evening. If you have any questions from the staff perspective, myself or the city attorney can answer those. If not, the applicant is present tonight and they have a presentation themselves as well.
Thank you, Mr. Burgeli. Does anybody on council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Noble.
Since we're looking at two service plans tonight, is one the master, and do they operate together in any fashion? The only thing that I would want to make certain is that the second one isn't tied to the build out of the first one in terms of power ultimately coming to the residents.
Yes, ma'am. The only relation they have is there is shared spine infrastructure, as we talked about 2 weeks ago, that connect the two districts. That improvement cost is projected at around $10 million. There will be a cost-sharing agreement, roughly 50-50, and the applicant can speak more to this, between the two districts for that. But to your point, there will not be any sort of control or pledging of revenue from one district to the other district, and the ability for one district to control the actions of the other district or prevent resident control ultimately, if that makes sense. Answers your question.
So we're looking at 60 mils total as the maximum. That's debt and operations and maintenance.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And it, that is actually a great step. The question always is, as we discussed at the study session, whether it's even necessary to have these or even at that scale. But I certainly appreciate the developer being willing to carry on the conversation when it was probably unexpected that might occur. So I appreciate that. I guess that's all the question I have right now. All the questions I have right now.
I would just like to add on, I'm not sure, and I haven't reviewed this, I just want to confirm the applicant may be able to clarify the relationship of the districts when it comes to the nature of the reimbursement or the cost sharing. That may involve a pledge of revenue in some way from one district to another, or they may each be issuing their own bonds. But that is something that, if there is a reimbursement agreement, that should come for review as well to ensure that the structure is fair and consistent with the service plan. But the applicant should be able to speak to the nature of that, what they anticipate.
Okay, good. Then I will ask that question again because that is a concern. Thank you.
Councilmember Madera.
Yeah, I just have one question about the interest rate. Looked like it was 12%. Seems a little high given our current, situation in the market. Why did we go with 12%?
Try to remember to take my mask off to speak so it's clear. Previously, the interest rate was at 18% with an underwriting discount maximum of 5%. Consistent with the new service plan in the city of Fort Collins that was reviewed and capped at 12% to, I believe, allow for fluctuations in the market based on the time of issuance of debt. Obviously, interest rates are likely much lower now. The applicant can speak to the flexibility needed there for what they need.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
Because this came up at a study session, we did have that conversation about how we wanted to change the service plans and have a full discussion about that and implement portions of the Fort Collins service plan, which this doesn't technically. There were quite a few other items that are part of the Fort Collins service plan. Why are we doing the service plan tonight rather than after we have a discussion about how we plan to change service plans?
Thank you for raising that question. Our understanding as staff was that council desired us to negotiate changes to this and to bring it back to council. The applicant desires to be able to conduct it, or to be able to form this year and have its elections. There's a requirement in state law that happen at the November election. And so in order to do that, they have to proceed to Adams County Court. So there's a question of timing. In order for them to form the district, they want to have it approved as soon as possible. They can't delay very long into September, if at all, in order to get to the Adams County District Court and then proceed with formation. Given that this was a negotiation without direction on a new city council policy, we made those changes that the applicant could agree to present back to city council for its review and consideration.
Anybody on council have any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And I'm looking for a motion and a second. Councilmember Hurst?
Yeah, I'd like a motion to approve Resolution 2021-51. The resolution approving the amended and restated service plan for Buckley Crossing Metropolitan District and the related intergovernmental agreement.
Councilmember Grimes?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2021-51 and 2021-52. Before we get to conversation, I do need to ask, did anybody register to speak?
Mayor Huseman, no one registered to speak on the item and no written comments were received by the deadline.
Thank you. Now I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2021-51 and 2021-52. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, will the city clerk please? Actually, it's going to be a voice vote. Excuse me. We'll take a voice vote. Actually, go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Resolutions 2021-51, resolution approving the amended and restated service plan for Buckley Crossing Metropolitan District and the related intergovernmental agreement. Resolution 2021-52, resolution approving the service plan for Buckley Crossing Metropolitan District Number 2 and the related intergovernmental agreement. Your vote should be open.
And is this vote going to be two separate votes?
I believe we have it set up to approve both resolutions with one motion and one vote, sir.
Okay, thank you. And resolutions both pass 8-1, with myself being the sole no vote. We'll now move on to resolutions. Resolution 2021-69, revised Commerce City storm drainage and technical criteria manual. Invite Brent Sutherland, city engineer, to make the presentation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of City Council. Tonight, we will be presenting the 2021 update to the Commerce City Storm Drainage and Technical Criteria Manual. Tonight with me, I have Chris Hodell, who is our Development Review Manager. He's been with the city about 6 months. And also we have Andrew Earls with Wright Water Engineering, who helped us put the manual together. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris for the presentation.
Hello, Mayor and council members. This slide provides an overview of the presentation. I'll start by identifying the need to update the manual. Then I'll give a brief overview of the outreach that was performed in getting feedback from the professional communities, the developers, the engineers, then we'll highlight the differences between the old manual and the new, and highlight some of the added sections. There is a new floodplain chapter. There are revisions to the detention and water quality policy, making it more consistent with mile-high flood districts criteria. There's a new chapter on construction requirements to protect water quality. Slightly revised variance process. This is a bullet list of the reasons why the manual revision is necessary. The old city's drainage manual has not been updated since 1989. The technical criteria in our manual are outdated. The update corresponds with current Mile High Flood District storm drainage criteria, and these updates correspond to more consistent requirements with the MS4, the water quality requirements that the state has. Simply stated, these new criteria are going to protect public health and safety and welfare and the environment. It provides a clear and orderly design criteria and process for drainage facility design for developers and redevelopers. In addition to bringing us up to date with the state requirements, this criteria will do a better job at protecting the public. But in general, we will be doing a better job at protecting the community water resources and water quality. Last year, we gave a similar presentation on October 12th in the 2020 study session. Our legal department gave some valuable input, especially on the variance process. I should point out that has not changed significantly. We also got input from city staff. Community development provided their input, as well as city management. And our staff in public works, as well as our third-party reviewers, gave valuable input. We also reached out to the community. On June 17th, we gave a heads up to the development community at our second quarter developer and construction stakeholder meeting, in which we outlined some of these changes. We specifically mentioned MDCIA, which is minimizing directly connected impervious areas. Andrew is going to give a little more information on that. Other organizations that were reached out to were the ditch companies, specifically FICO had some comments. Basically, we didn't have too many comments from the development community. They understand that we're just coming up to speed with our criteria, bringing up to Mile High Flood District standards. With that, I will turn it over to Andrew.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Andrew Earls with Wright Water Engineers in Denver, Colorado, and we were the consultant that's been working with your staff to develop this criteria manual. And I wanted to quickly review some of the changes that Chris has mentioned, but I'll go into just a little more detail. So to start out with, just some general changes that we've made is that we've tried to improve the readability and the technical clarity of the manual, which is something that we've done with a number of manuals that we work on. And most of the underlying policies and principles have not changed. I mean, the fundamentals of this urban drainage have not changed a whole lot. The way that we deal with water quality has, however, in some ways. And so what we have done is that we've improved the consistency with the criteria for the Mile High Flood District, which is really the regional standard of practice. We've also added a few chapters, and this is not necessarily new information, it's just getting it into the criteria manual. So we've added a chapter on floodplain rules and regulations that I'll tell you about on the next slide. We've added a chapter on stormwater quality, and as Chris mentioned, a chapter on construction site stormwater management, which are all common chapters that are included in local government criteria manuals that we work at across the Front Range. So in terms of the floodplain rules and regulations, we did not invent new floodplain rules and regulations. What we really did was to summarize what's already in your land use code in the chapter but to put it in a place in a criteria manual where engineers who are designing things can have it right at their fingertips. And so people will still need to go to the land use code for some things. We haven't created any inconsistencies there, but what we've done is really to paraphrase it so that it's in a place where engineers will know to look for it. And it just really provides an overview. The city is already in the National Flood Insurance Program. You already have these regulations, so it's not really a material change. It's just a matter of getting it into the manual. Then there were some changes on stormwater detention and the water quality policy. And I apologize for the spaghetti diagram, but I promise I won't make you go through all of it. But people like me, engineers, like diagrams like this because we can go to a diagram like this. And what it is it's a flow chart where you just answer yes or no questions to figure out what do you have to do for water quality on your site and what do you have to do for detention on your site. Now, Commerce City has long had requirements as long as you've had an MS4 permit for water quality and even longer than that for detention. And so what we really did was to bring it into a consistent framework that is also compatible with the requirements of the MS4 permit, which is a stormwater permit that the city holds. And you have to enforce that permit. And so this hierarchy allows you to implement your drainage criteria manual in a way that's going to be consistent with that MS4 permit. And basically, this is just depending on the size of your site. You know, the 5,000 square feet limit that you see at the top corner there, and I'll just go to this next one, corresponds to the bottom row that I'm showing down here in the table. And really, that's the limit that already existed for the city's grading permit. And so what we've done is to make the stormwater requirements consistent with the grading permit requirements. And what you see is for very small sites, we really don't require a whole lot aside from just disconnecting runoff from impervious areas so it has an opportunity to infiltrate. That can be a big effect on small sites. Once you get above 5,000 square feet, between that and an acre, then you're into the territory where you do need to provide detention and water quality. But there are probably simplified ways you can do the water quality using things like rain gardens. It's a little less complicated than really big sites. And there are even some simpler ways just based on infiltration you can satisfy the criteria. And then when you're above greater than or equal to an acre, you're into the territory that the MS4 permit regulates. And this is very consistent with criteria manuals that we've done for Denver, for Colorado Springs, for the city of Woodland Park. I could name about 5 other ones that we've done in the past 5 years that are all going similar routes as this. So that is a change on the stormwater and detention. The other change I mentioned is that we have added a chapter on stormwater quality and construction site stormwater controls. And the city has a lot of standards for these, but they were never put into the manual. And so we have written a chapter. There is a, also under the city's MS4 permit, you have to regulate runoff from construction sites. And so we've added criteria into the manual that will allow you to do that a little more explicitly. Again, it's not changing anything that's not already required under the general stormwater permit for the state. It's memorializing it in the manual and providing guidance where the people that design stormwater plans to manage erosion and sediment can find it and just have a resource to go to there. So again, a change, but it's really just adding information into this manual into a place where we think people will need it. And then, Chris, I think I'm kicking it over to you for the variance process, and then I'll be back to tell you one more slide, I think, at the end.
Okay. There is going to be an opportunity for the applicant to request a variance. In our opinion, it should be highly disfavored, but it will apply on a case-by-case basis. And the criteria for approval, the applicant has to be, applicant is unable to comply, and it is not, basically not the fault of the applicant. Variance should address a unique condition, and they need to also provide alternative criteria, supporting documentation, descriptions of cumulative impacts, including adverse impacts, both upstream and downstream. It should not represent or cause an increased cost to the city, and it should meet the principles of the criteria, and it should not be divergent from that. The variance should also not cause any adverse impacts, like previously mentioned, or property damage to others. And the new application process will be submitted to Public Works for a final decision by the city engineer. And finally, the applicant could file an appeal in the context of permit being sought through the Land Development Code.
Okay, well, we're in the home stretch now, and Chris gave me a real good segue. Every good criteria manual needs a good variance process, and this is something that I know that the city attorney and the city staff put a lot of good thought into to figure out how this should work in Commerce City. The last two issues I want to talk about are retention and pump drainage. And for those of you who heard me speak last October, these were two kind of hot button issues that we needed to deal with. And the retention issue is a tricky one, and there is a lot of retention of stormwater in Commerce City because you don't have great outfalls and some of these things cannot drain. The problem is that that's in violation of state water law. You just can't allow retention without water rights, period, under Colorado state water law. And so there are cases where you can use retention. Retention can be used as a stormwater quality treatment method as opposed to flood control detention. So when it's used for stormwater quality, it treats small events. It would need to be designed in accordance with the flood district criteria, and there is a retention pond criteria in the flood district manual, and it would also have to have adequate water rights, and that alone may discourage it. But if people can obtain water rights and, for example, want to have a nice wet pond with water around a development that adds aesthetics to it, they can still do that. They just need to get water rights. However, and this is consistent with policy across the metro area, is that it is not allowed for detention. And you get into issues like they have up in Brighton right now with dry day flow going over a road when you have a wet July because the ponds just cannot drain. Now, I would say that there is a variance process, and if you get into a specific situation and there's a justification to do that, meeting the criteria that Chris just mentioned, and you get water rights, that could be considered through a variance process. But the policy is to not allow it. And by variance, you could allow it if you decided to. But that is a very, very sound drainage policy, and it's something that other municipalities across the metro area also are adopting because they have to with Colorado water law. And then the second one that goes kind of hand in hand with that is pumped drainage. And to meet Colorado water law, you have to drain water out from these stormwater facilities within a 72-hour period generally in order to be compliant. And in some cases, if you don't have an outfall, people will say, well, okay, let's put in a pump and we can pump it down over 72 hours. And that can work, but pumps have problems. They're unreliable. The power usually goes out when you need it the most in the middle of a big flood event. Gravity drainage is much better when you can do it. So again, the policy is that they're not allowed to serve as permanent water quality pump detention basins for any development, and it's because of those reliability issues. It can be allowed on a temporary basis if that's your only way to do something is to pump it down, but that is only on a temporary basis. It's not an excuse to not build an outfall. It is something to use until you can drain a gravity outfall, because that will lead to lower life cycle costs, less liability for the city. And so it may be approved as an interim solution until there is a permanent solution. So again, it's good policy to not allow it. That's the fundamental policy, but in specific cases, you can allow it as an interim measure. So again, we've tried to establish firm criteria, but like any good rule, there has to be an exception when the right conditions warrant. And that's what the variance process that Chris just described will achieve. And I believe that takes us to questions, and I'd be glad to field any questions that the group has of me. And I also know that Chris and Brent are also available to answer questions that you may have of them. And thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you for that presentation and information. Does anybody on council have any questions? Seeing no requests for questions, I'm looking for a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2021-69. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Alan Thomas.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2021-69. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, The city clerk will read the title.
I left that out of the script. I apologize, Mayor. Resolution 2021-69, a resolution adopting the revised Commerce City Storm Drainage and Technical Criteria Manual. This can be a voice vote.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And that'll pass unanimously, 9-0. Next, we'll move on to ordinances on first reading. We have Ordinance 2347, amending the 2021 budget. Does anybody on council have any questions for staff? Seeing no requests for questions, I'm looking for a motion and a second to introduce by council as seated and approve on first reading Ordinance 2347. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved.
Councilmember Alan Thomas.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to introduce by council as seated and approve on first reading Ordinance 2347. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, will the clerk please read the title and take a roll call vote?
Ordinance 2347, an ordinance amending the 2021 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by transferring $350,000 from the general fund to the facilities fund for costs associated with the Facility Assessment Priority 1 projects and design work related to the ADA audit and the authorization of the expenditure thereof. Your vote should be open. Councilmember Noble? Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously, 9-0. We'll now move on to administrative council business. Per council policy, except for emergency and unforeseen items, council members are encouraged to submit administrative business items by the Tuesday before the meeting with another council member's endorsement. This week, one item was submitted by Councilmember Madera. That is the Ciders and Sliders for Ralston House request for sponsorship. I'd like to invite Councilmember Madera to introduce your item.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so I submitted this for the Ralston House, who provides child abuse services like advocacy, and this event specifically is to support the child abuse pediatrician and to expand their medical program. And so proposing that we sponsor the event as a supporting sponsor for $1,000 for the Sliders and Ciders. It'll be taking place on Sunday, September 19th. So I'd like to make the motion to sponsor the event.
I have a motion to sponsor the Ralston House Ciders and Sliders event. Is there a second? Councilmember Noble? Councilmember Noble? I have a motion to sponsor that. Councilmember Wadiola?
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries unanimously, 9-0. Next up, we have the municipal judge recruitment. I would invite Robert Sheasley, city attorney, to lead the discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. On behalf of the staff in the city attorney's office, given Judge Juarez's pending retirement in February of next year, there is a proposal that there be an internal recruitment process handled through the Human Resources Department this fall, posting in September or October, and that would allow for a refinement and review of candidates by the council after the election, so that the newly seated council in December would be able to make that decision, beginning probably in early December, being able to review candidates and interview in December and January, with the idea of making an appointment before February of 2022, when the judge's retirement is effective. Just so you know, the municipal judge is appointed to a 2-year term under the city charter, and the current term ends at the end of February. If there's not an appointment made, you can always appoint an interim or acting judge for that period of time, I believe. But that will be open to any qualified person who's a resident of Adams County, and I believe has been practicing law for 5 years under the charter. I understand from the HR director that he's going to put together a pamphlet and profile and job description for the position to have council review before it is posted. And so wanted to run that by you before the work got underway on that and have council's endorsement. Thank you.
Councilmember Madera.
I'd like to make the motion to begin the municipal judge recruitment process as outlined by staff.
I have a motion to begin the municipal judge recruitment process as outlined by staff. Councilmember Grimes.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. Just curious if an internal recruitment, what kind of posting would that be? Is that just to the city website, or would there be additional postings?
Without having any knowledge of human resources or hiring practices, I will say that yes, there are opportunities to post elsewhere. We can post through the municipal league, through the bar association, and I'm sure there are a number of other venues, the Adams County Bar Association, the State Bar Association, and various lawyer groups throughout the state and the region.
Is that something we could request be done as part of the process, or that would automatically be done?
I believe it's included, we'll say that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing no other requests for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion carries unanimously 9-0. Are there any other council members wishing to bring up an administrative council business that was not agendized? Councilmember Noble.
Yes, I'd like to direct this to Mr. Sheasley on item, I lost the number. Oh, there it is. 2021-51 and 2021-52. I didn't, regrettably, I didn't hear the mayor ask the question if we had questions for the applicant, and I don't feel comfortable leaving my vote as a yes vote. May I change my vote to a no vote at this point?
I believe the appropriate procedure would be to move to reconsider the council action on that motion on those two resolutions. And if there is a second, given that you were in the yes votes on that item, you would be eligible to make that vote. And then if your desire is just to change the vote, there would be a second. And if it passes, then there would be a new motion to approve those resolutions, and then you could change your vote at that time.
All right. So what's my first step?
It would be a motion to reconsider the approval of resolutions 2021-51 and 52.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to reconsider resolutions 2021-51 and 2021-52.
I have a motion to reconsider resolutions 2021-51 and 2021-52. Is there a second? Councilmember Alan Thomas.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to reconsider resolutions 2021-51 and 2021-52. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, give me a show of hands. Who's saying yes to that? And that's gonna pass 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll go 7-2 with Council Members Madera and Councilmember Grimes voting no.
And so at this point, there would be, we've never actually had a motion to reconsider in the time I've been here. So I believe the next step would be someone to make the motion to on approval of resolutions 2021-51 and 2021-52 again. And then we'll have a vote on that.
And now I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve resolutions 2021-51 and 2021-52. Mayor Pro Tem.
So moved for both.
Councilmember Hurst.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2021-51 and 2021-52. Is there any discussion? Seeing no requests for discussion, will you please do a roll call vote?
Your vote should be open.
And let the record reflect that the vote is now 7-2 with myself and Councilmember Noble voting no. Are there any other council members wishing to do an administrative council business? Mayor Pro Tem Frank?
Yeah, so in regards to the complaints that came in last week, I wanted to give Councilmember Guardiola an opportunity to speak regarding that because it does involve himself and then our Director of HR. And so I feel like because that was, you know, not just like a personal complaint, but also against the department, that I felt that he should have an opportunity to, I guess, speak to his, I guess, defense as far as that complaint goes. So I just wanted to get his thoughts on it.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Temp. Yeah, in regards to the email, I have never guaranteed anybody a position in the city. People that know me, my integrity was attacked, and that is just something I wouldn't do. Second of all, I am proud that my brother is the HR director. He's a Commerce City raised person who went off and came back and works for the city. But in no means have I ever guaranteed anybody a job. So just wanted to put it out there. Thank you.
Any other council members with administrative council business? Councilmember Madera?
Yeah, by the same token, you know, I want to bring up the letter that we received regarding Councilmember Noble. You know, I struggle with this because, I mean, first and foremost, we should all be good neighbors. And, you know, the things that were outlined in the report seem to be contrary. And, you know, being on city council, you have to hold yourself to higher standards. And intimidation is not condoned in any way. It shouldn't be, you know, ever used. You know, there were some pretty grand allegations about being discriminatory in nature. And I really hope that's not the case. But, you know, I was reminded of an incident that I had with Councilmember Noble before she was a council member, where there's a Facebook post that attacked everyone on council and addressed everyone by name, except for me. You know, I was called Pedro. And so, you know, to most people that might not be something of significance, but there is a power dichotomy. You know, we live in the age of the Karen, you know, for lack of better terms. And that is something where you do put someone down, you know, and so, you know, I want to ask Councilwoman Noble to use this as a learning experience. I think, you know, we don't know enough to, you know, ask for resignation, but, you know, if there was anything discriminatory, that should be a resignation, you know, no questions asked. But I think it's hard to tell from that letter, and I don't know, you know, what the proper course of action is, but, you know, I think it's something that needs to be addressed. We were asked to address it, and some of the allegations, you know, yelling at people's children when they're playing in their own backyards, that's unacceptable. You know, going and badgering people because you found a wallet after
Mayor.
they told you that.
If I may, excuse me, Councilmember Madera. I think during admin council business, if there's not a motion to make or anything, I think expounding on something, especially without giving a council member the opportunity to respond or address without having the council haven't acted on anything, it would not be appropriate to continue.
Okay, well, I want to ask you then, what is in our discretion, to ask for, holding each other accountable?
So as we've outlined a few times previously for this council, there are, and I believe I did in an email communication last week, there are council's discretion in holding each other accountable varies, largely limited at reprimanding or censure. Council has previously, as you know, undertaken an investigation with the expenditure of city funds using an outside party. And so, but currently there's not a set structure for resolving council complaints against council members.
So I guess how would a censure work in this case?
Being clear that I have not investigated any of it and I have no opinion on these matters. I want to make that very clear. As I've advised previously, council can act by motion or by a written act. It is a statement of disapproval of the city council if approved. It does not bind the council member in any way. It does not limit them from acting or participating in any way. That said, even though it has that effect, I would say it is from my perspective, a severe action because you are condemning your colleague and it should not be undertaken lightly.
Well, I think, maybe I'll table this until can discuss, further action.
Councilmember Noble.
Thank you very much, Mayor Huseman. As noted last week, when I first saw the letter prior to the meeting on Monday night, this was a neighbor dispute over a barking dog. The people do not live next door to us. They don't live behind us. They live across the street from us. I am eager to have it investigated if you would like. I would be happy to address the letter point by point. I really am at a loss, Councilmember Madera, because you put me in the awkward position of feeling like I need to defend myself when I have done nothing. Your assumption is that the letter writer is accurate. That is a wrong assumption. And if you wish to investigate, fellow council members, I am happy to have you do so. No problem. Again, we are assuming, apparently, that the letter has no inaccuracies. That would be a false assumption.
Councilmember Grimes.
Thank you, Mayor. May I request a 5-minute recess?
There's a second.
I have a motion for a 5-minute recess. Councilmember Madera.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for a 5-minute recess. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed say nay. We will reconvene at 8:48 p.m. ran a couple minutes over. There were some other conversations that were taking place. Councilmember Madera, you said you were going to table this. We're continuing with that?
Yes, sir, until we can determine proper course of action.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else on council have any administrative council business they'd like to bring up this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports. Our first report is from City Manager Tinklenberg.
Mayor,
Excuse me,
I believe-
Mr. Mayor?
What?
What did you say? I'm not hearing you clearly this evening.
We are moving on to reports.
Before that, after
I asked if
you
anybody,
talked to Mr. Madera.
I asked if anybody else had any administrative council business that they wish to bring up.
I do.
You do? Okay, go ahead.
So I would very much like to address some of the accusations repeated by Councilmember Madera. I think first and foremost, the most important one to me is regarding racial profiling and any discriminatory actions. That is foreign to my nature, but of course, any of us who are white might say that. On the other hand, I would like to address specifically in the letter from the neighbor who lives across the street and owns a Doberman that runs back and forth in the yard barking. She said that there was a card with money inside of it. I found the card in the street on a wet road. I asked neighbors if they were related to the person named in the card. It was a birthday card, clearly to a young person, $25 cash in it, and it was from 2 aunts and an uncle. I also called Landmark Academy because folks park on our street in order to wait for their kids who are getting out of Landmark Academy, so anybody could have dropped it that afternoon because it was wet. There was nothing personal in my question. It was simply asking neighbors and asking Landmark Academy in order to be able to deliver the $25 to this young person who had a birthday. I did have a question in October of 2018 about a Halloween decoration at the home of black bags hung by the neck, what appeared to be the neck, and feet tied. I suggested that some might misinterpret what those decorations were, and I made that question 2 weeks later, probably. I haven't spent time with them. I didn't even know the woman's name until she sent the letter. It is disturbing to be accused of things that are misrepresented or mischaracterized. I would be happy to address this in a more extensive manner. I can sit down with Mr. Madera, who didn't contact me in advance, and I'd be more than happy to talk with him about it if that would be of any help. If not, as I said, I'm perfectly happy to have an investigation, if you would like that, but I will not have my name sullied or be defamed in this manner by a fellow council member.
Thank you, Councilmember Noble. Do any other council members have any administrative council business they wish to bring up? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports. Mr. Tinklenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few items here. One is that we had a meeting with some of the Adams 14 staff last week, including the new superintendent. So we have ongoing discussions regarding a possible culinary arts program. And as I had mentioned in response to a question earlier, they are planning to work with Metropolitan State University on a program if we proceed with culinary arts. Also, just a reminder that we have a joint meeting with Adams 14 School Board coming up on August 30, and a joint meeting with the 27J School Board on August 31, and the City of Brighton will be hosting that. We've had more city council candidates registered with the city clerk's office, and those are listed on our website. In terms of community development, the Amazon building that's been going up has received a temporary certificate of occupancy. Active land use cases are still holding steady at just over 190. Regarding Murray Farms development, Jason, Jenna, and I had a good meeting with the developer staff, and they're refining the concept that is more in compliance with the land use plan. That's part of the 2010 comprehensive plan. And then in terms of code enforcement has updated its postcard to residents outlining the typical information on property maintenance and common code violations. And those are sent out to neighborhoods prior to an inspection of that area to allow residents to proactively address potential complaints. And then the rental assistance program has reached $692,000 obligated. And if you recall, at the end of July, that was at $585,000. So again, we've increased that by more than $100,000. In terms of economic development, some of this was in the city manager update this past Thursday, but Wingstop is planning a new restaurant, and that will be next to the ENT Credit Union in Reunion Station off of 104th and Chambers Road. Planet Cyclery is opening a distribution center, I should say. They've purchased a 19,000 square foot light industrial building at 9640 Havana, and it'll be used as a fulfillment center and for the company's warehousing needs. They sell quality bikes, components, and apparel. And then Ziggy's Coffee plan to add 2 new locations in Commerce City, one on the southwest corner of 120th and Chambers, and the other in the Aspen Hills development at 103rd Place and Chambers. They already have an existing cafe drive-through at 10401 Bell Creek Boulevard. And then Public Works has the pavement management program underway, and 112th Avenue Bridge over Fulton Ditch. Drove by there on Friday. The bridge deck is removed, and they were installing pilings to support the new structure. That's it for my report currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tinklenberg. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Tinklenberg? Councilmember Noble? Anybody have any questions for Mr. Tinklenberg about his report? Seeing none, just want to again say thank you and say thank you to Economic Development Team. Those are some good updates to have, and I know they continue to work hard to bring about the amenities that residents are continuing to ask for, and hopefully as we continue to gain traction with some of these other businesses, that's going to lead to that second grocery store that we all keep hearing about and keep clamoring for and keep begging for. And so please, if you're a grocery store operator, please. Mr. Sheasley.
My only report tonight, I just wanted to recognize one of my staff members. We just completed our first ever summer internship program, and it's something I think we'd like to continue and recognize Ashlyn Duthorn, who is a first-year law student at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and she did fantastic work, and hopefully she desires pursuing a career in municipal law. So if anybody is watching and knows anybody interested in municipal law or working for government, I am available to talk to anybody in the community, and as is anybody in my staff, because it's an interesting career. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sheasley. Does anybody on council have any questions for Mr. Sheasley regarding his report? Seeing none, are there any council members out there wishing to make a report? Councilmember Wadiola?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, just want to recap, we had 4 Music in the Parks in collaboration with the outreaches, went great. A huge shout out to the Cultural Council and the Music in the Park Committee, Abe Ramirez, who really led the efforts on that. The next big event is Karma City Eats, September 18th through the 26th. We're looking for restaurants in Karma City that want to sign up to be a part of Karma City Eats. So if you're a restaurant owner, you will be getting reached out by a cultural council member to sign up for free promotion, advertising, and we want to really promote our restaurants in the city. Karma City Eats, September 18th through the 26th. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Wadiola. Councilmember Grimes?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to talk about the chamber meeting last week. Had a chamber meeting on Thursday, and one thing I wanted to bring back and share with council and anybody who's listening is that chamber is considering putting together a welcome packet or package for new businesses in Commerce City. So I thought that was kind of a neat idea, a new program that they're going to work on standing up, and look forward to seeing that come to fruition. And then also just wanted to remind everybody that we do have another ribbon cutting coming up with Chamber on September 1st for Goal Academy. So would love to see everybody there.
Thank you, Councilmember Grimes. Councilmember Ellen Thomas?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to report on August 11th, I attended the opioid town hall panel discussion with Attorney General Phil Weisler and the state director of the opioid response. Her name was Heidi Williams. And just to let everyone know, they're working with all the cities in Adams County to establish a committee to see how the money for the lawsuit can be used. And then on August 12th, I attended the Senior Commission meeting, and they are just working with the city staff to update the online resource page. And next month, they will vote who is going to be the next executive team. And then also later on in that evening on August 12th, I did enjoy going out to the last Music in the Park that was sponsored by the Cultural Council. So that was a really enjoyable evening, and the band was really entertaining as well. And that's all I have for my reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Allen Thomas. Are there any other council members wishing to make a report? Councilmember Noble?
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to do an update for the Outlook neighborhood. This is regarding the Great Western Edmondson site that is outside of the city's boundaries, but the plan called for 24 wells, to frack under the Outlook neighborhood and also part of E470. Smoke was observed emitting from the site behind the sound walls for 2 days last week, and in conversations with the COGCC and air pollution, it was determined that it was non-road vehicle smoke. Non-road vehicle smoke is not outlawed by the CDPHE. They are allowed to emit smoke even on days when we're having heavy smoke. So that was a problem. But in the process of talking with them, I discovered something else. In 2018, Adams County approved the 24 wells for Edmondson. In January of 2021, the COGCC approved 4 of the 24 wells. This past week, Great Western has been fracking 1 of the 4 wells, so that's only 1 of the 24 wells. That 1 well is not being fracked under Outlook. It is north of E470. They're trying to keep their permit alive. They don't know when they'll get back to that site again. So that's good information for the Outlook neighborhood, that it appears as if fracking under that neighborhood is not imminent. Number 2, the American Rescue Plan has a $50 million program for air monitoring that will go to impacted cities. And I would very much like Commerce City to apply for some of the $50 million. One area I would like to see it, in addition to, of course, South Commerce City, where we've had so many conversations about this over the last year and a half, is also in North Commerce City, where there are no air monitors. Whatever notifications we get regarding PM 2.5 or PM 10 or ozone is strictly from the Derby area, where there is an air monitoring station. So we could apply for it and have it in Northern Commerce City. This becomes important because there are 2 pads on 136th. There is a pad on 132nd. And of course, there is still the Edmondson pad. So we get that wind from the north, particularly during the winter, and it would be good to have a baseline as we move forward. Air monitors would be great. There are no monitors from the EPA, by the way, between Derby and Greeley, east of I-25. So this would be an important step. Third, I met with McWhinney, the team from McWhinney, which is purchasing the Third Creek area. We had a very interesting conversation. And finally, I met with the 1906 company. Someone was speaking to us in a committee earlier today and said that there are no marijuana companies north of 96th. Actually, there are. It is the 1906 company. The 1906 company would like to be able to off-site their product in a separate warehouse so that they could expand within the confines of the building that they have. And however, that apparently requires a change in the building code or something, some sort of licensing, because it's very particular for marijuana companies. And I hope that we can move forward and figure that out. How, Mr. Tinklenberg, is that kind of thing accomplished? Those kinds of changes accomplished?
Honestly, I'm not familiar with the process. Gibson?
Looks like Mr. Rogers is getting ready to answer.
I would defer to Deputy City Manager Jason Rogers. I know at the early stages of their exploration of the topic, they met with community development staff. Off-site storage, it would be an amendment to the Land Development Code. If the Land Development Code is allowed to have off-site storage, then it wouldn't be a licensing issue because we would just license them per the code. But Deputy City Manager Jason Rogers may have more information.
Is that something that requires a form from
It requires
a
either.
city council member?
Jason, do you want to answer? Would you like me to?
So I will weigh in. Thank you, Dylan. Just so you know, we do have an open community development director position. I think you would do lovely with that. All jokes aside, the process will require an amendment to our land development code. I would state that there are two avenues in which staff could pursue that. One that is brought forward by staff as what we would regularly do in a land development code update, either on a quarterly basis or on an as needed. I would share with you that staff has conducted its initial assessment that, given some of the other priorities that have been established for the department, an update to the land development code to allow for said use of off-site storage of, I would say, marijuana-based products is not a priority for staff. That being said, the other process is that council could take action as a body, which could be brought forward at a future meeting for it to be voted upon, directing staff to take action in preparing an ordinance that would amend the land development code to allow said use to be considered by either a by right or a discretionary process for approval by the Planning Commission and City Council.
it's not a priority, do you mean we won't do it in January, we won't do it next October, we won't do it in 2023? I'm not sure what not a priority means.
So just to generally put it, ma'am, when I say not a priority, it's not something that we have identified in our work plan as being able to meet the need of our community or to meet the needs of what's been identified for us by the council as a body for community development.
Okay, so I will pursue it otherwise, because it could certainly fall under economic development that would then have, it would have that kind of outcome as well. So I think it's something to consider. Yes, Mr. Sheasley.
Thank you. And I believe Mr. Rogers was also maybe trying to say that unless council identifies it as a priority otherwise. And so as with any other ordinance, if council wishes to have a motion to direct the preparation of an ordinance, that could be performed.
Thank you for that clarification, Robert. You hit the nail on the head. Exactly, yes. If council deems it to be a priority, then obviously we would adjust our work schedule accordingly. But at this time, council has not done such, and we are focusing on those matters at hand.
Correct. And I just had the meeting this past week, so it was brought to my attention. So appreciate that.
Pleasure.
I'll think about how I pursue this. Appreciate that. And then finally, in listening to the task force earlier tonight and having read the report, I go back to the conversation we had during the budget discussion and directing money from the funds that we get in from Suncor to address some of the issues that they would like to have taken care of. You know, if we don't have captioning in Spanish on Channel 8, then we put money towards that out of the Suncor taxes that we receive. It doesn't seem to me that some of these things should be a challenge when we actually have funds that are coming from Suncor and, you know, affecting people who live in South Commerce City. I would like to see us think about how we can make use of the money in a way that helps people. Thank you.
Councilmember Hurst.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely wasn't going to bring this topic up tonight, but I just wanted to mention that the 1906 topic was brought up in 2020, again in February 2021, and now again. We voted on it that it wasn't a priority. I mean, I didn't vote that way. I still think it is a business retention issue, and it is completely done and approved by our two neighboring cities, and I feel like we're going to start losing companies because of it, because they've literally built a small business and expanded beyond their site on what their ability to do, and they're now not able to store their finished product as it waits to find a home to be sold at for retail. Don't care what type of business it is. It's a small business. It's been successful in paying taxes. I still think we should pursue that. Not suggesting we copy and paste anything, but it would be almost as simple as copy and pasting from Denver, because the regulatory change is not major.
Any other council members wishing to make a report? Seeing none, I have a brief one. On Wednesday, had the Airport Coordinating Committee meeting, if you want to call it that. Lack of representation resulted in us not having a quorum that morning. Later that afternoon, I had a meeting with the individuals that wish to develop around the commuter rail station at 72nd and Colorado, and their concern was over the length of it takes to get things through the development timeline. On Thursday, had the privilege of attending the Beyond the Call of Duty event at the Bison Ridge Recreation Center. Would like to thank that organization for coming out here and honoring the late Officer Holland, and was great to see all the officers out there that were showing their support as well to both the family and the department, to include officers from the Adams County Sheriff's Office and the Colorado State Patrol, and thank both those other organizations for continuing to support our police department through that loss. Would also like to mention that we received an email from Suncor that their Commerce City and Northern Denver air monitoring program is now live. You can go to www.ccnd-air.com. The website is available in both English and Spanish to access the program dashboard and learn more. And you can see real-time live monitoring. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out going forward with that information at our disposal. And look forward to seeing how that goes. So that is all I have for a report. Our next item on the agenda is a potential executive session. We have two reasons for going into executive session. I'm looking for a motion and a second to enter into an executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, parentheses 4, sub parentheses B, for the purpose of receiving legal advice concerning potential affirmative litigation, and CRS 24-6-402, parentheses 4, sub parentheses F, regarding the mid-year performance goal assessments for the city attorney. Councilmember Hurst.
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session for those two reasons. Is there any discussion? Seeing no request for discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And the motion carries 9-0, so we will go into executive session. The City Council will now enter executive session. The City Council will not be taking action following the executive session. The meeting will adjourn immediately following the executive session without further discussion of public business. The Zoom meeting and broadcast will be ended at this time. Thank you very much for your participation in watching this evening. Hope you have a good night, have a good week, and also just want to say thank you to Guns N' Roses for coming to Commerce City and making this Paradise City. Have a good evening.